It has been a while since I recorded my first introduction video for the Lighting Literacy podcast. And I was fixing a webinar for a literacy assessment class choice board module. And I realized that, one day I won't be a student anymore. I won't be a doc student. I might not have access to my account. So I decided to upload it to YouTube. And then I thought, well, I might as well dive back into that project that I kind of abandoned. So here I am. And I'm sure that a lot of these episodes are going to be messy at first, and I'm learning, and that is okay. I welcome constructive feedback, but I also want to set the stage that this is not a formal environment. This is me talking to you like a friend about theory and literacy instruction and my beliefs. So I want you to keep that in mind as you engage with what I'm saying. And as a friend and as a partner in this, I don't think that I am the authority on everything. I think I can share my perspective and what I know, but it's only based in my own understanding. And that doesn't mean that it's correct. It just means that as of right now, with my understanding of the world, that's what's correct to me. So, one of the things that's really important is to understand my epistemological stance. So, what do I believe about knowledge? So, I am a constructivist. I think that knowledge is built in that the learner is experiencing things and constructing knowledge and creating meaning based off of their lens of the world. We're actively engaged in the learning process as learners, and that's how we make meaning. So one of the theories that aligns with this is called schema theory. And with schema theory, it means that we have these little schemata, so little bits of knowledge, and we put them all together. And we either create new meaning or we change what we understand about the world based off of the new meaning that we've created from a new experience. So all of these come together, and that's what is our foundation for understanding the world. The other theory that really influences my understanding of literacy instruction is transactional theory. I am a Rosenblatt fangirl. I think that was one of the first citations that I ever memorized was her reader response theory or transactional theory. And what I love about transactional theory is it centers the reader as having a transaction with the text. So you can read for an efferent reason, which is when you're trying to read for information, you read a certain way. And then you read in an aesthetic manner when you're reading for enjoyment. And the way that we interact is determined by whatever type of experience we're having with that text. And then we use our schema to interpret whatever it is we're reading. And that is how we analyze and how we understand and digest the text. I loved this theory. The first time I read it about it, I was like, this is what we need to bring to the secondary education classroom because too many times even as an English teacher myself, so as a student or as a teacher side, I was always so frustrated with the idea that there was only one right answer when it came to literary analysis because there's really not. There's a beautiful article that talks about how sometimes the blue curtain is just a blue curtain and it's not, representing the deep sadness and loneliness of the protagonist. And we end up butchering literature and stealing away any kind of enjoyment from students when we try to funnel them into this one understanding. So, transactional theory guides my pedagogical practice as I want to know, what do you think? Why do you think it? Can you clearly tell me and articulate those things? Because that is much more meaningful and engaging than trying to just answer the way you think I want you to answer because I'm in a position of power over you as an instructor. And I don't want to teach that way. I want my students to feel like they are in a partnership where their background knowledge is honored, their cultural perspectives are honored, and that's why I align to this epistemology and these theories as my framework and my perspective on literacy instruction. So one of the things that I am really wanting to push back on in literacy world is the standardized assessments, because there's really not anything meaningful that I've ever taken from taking a standardized test. I've never been like, ooh, you know what? I really shined there. I could really show what I knew about language arts from taking this test. And I don't think that I showed anything. I showed my understanding of a multiple choice question in a given circumstance on a given day under whatever mood I was in that day. So I'm going to push back a little bit during this podcast adventure on standardization and focus more on project-based learning. And I know that some people might go, ugh, we don't have the time. We don't have time for project-based learning. We have 35 students in our classroom and half of them are hanging from the ceiling because we don't have enough desks. I get it. But I do want to share some strategies of what has worked for me, even in unruly classrooms where students don't want to be there. I've never taught advanced placement English classes at the high school level because there was always someone in that role, but also I didn't want to. I wanted to be with students who maybe it wasn't their favorite thing, but if I could equip them with the right tools, then maybe I could help them not dread it. I didn't even expect them to love it, like it, tolerate it. Just don't fear it. Don't fear the writing process. Don't fear the reading process. I had students all the time tell me, I don't know how to read well, or I'm a terrible writer. This is my worst subject. And what really boiled down to is they had been experiencing classroom environments that definitely were not aligned with reader response theory, valuing the reader's thoughts and background knowledge and how that interacts with their interpretation of a text. It was very like, this is what you're supposed to get. The answer is always 1 + 1 = 2. Well, it's not. Sometimes it's 1 + 1 = 3. Sometimes it's 1 + 1 = blue. And that's the wonderful thing about literacy and reading is we get to decide sometimes what motivated a character to do something. And the only person who can tell us we're wrong is the writer. Now, those arguments of what we believe in can be weak. We might not be able to prove it with textual evidence, in which case I would say, okay, but how do you know? Can you articulate why you think that? And if they can't, then that's probably not even an accurate portrayal of what they think and of what their transaction was with that text. So there's a lot of things that might not be super conventional about how I view literature, but it is real. And my literacy philosophy, it's changed over the years because my own schema has developed and it's going to continue to develop. I'm in year 3 of a doctorate program and I don't know everything. I know a lot about one area, and then I know absolutely nothing about other areas, and that's okay. And I'm going to be completely transparent. There's times where I'll probably share an article because I have questions and I don't fully understand it. And maybe, just maybe, if I come here and I talk through it, even if no one listens, even if someone's already checked out in minute 1 because they hate my voice or my eyebrows, or if they're watching or whatever, it won't matter because I just want to explore it. And if other people want to engage in this process and help me along the way, or if I help them along the way, then that will be really, really cool. So, going back to my master's program, I had to write a literacy philosophy. And I'll never forget a girl, Jana, in my class, a woman, she said in class one night, okay, look at it like this. Digraphs are chocolate milk Once you put them together, they just become one and they're not coming apart. But blends, they're like salt and pepper. You hear both of them and you can eventually separate them, but it takes some work. And I'll never forget that because at this point, that night on Zoom, I had literally been talking to my husband about how I felt like I should drop out. It was not for me. I was a secondary education teacher and a primary grades course, and I had tears of inadequacy just running down my face. And she explained this to me in such a beautiful way that I could understand because she was treating me like a partner in that classroom. She wasn't my instructor, she was a peer. She ended up not being in my cohort and graduated before me, but those moments of insecurity I think were really necessary because in those moments of weakness, it helped me identify with how my students felt in that secondary classroom because I don't know what it feels like to be frustrated when I read to the point where I don't want to read anymore. But I did know what it felt like to reach a point where something felt like it was too much and I wanted to bail. And so, I mean, luckily, year 3 of a doc program, obviously I didn't quit, but I kept going because of amazing peers and professors who gave me their time. And time is such a valuable gift. And they did that one-on-one instruction with me so I could learn. So even though I felt really intimidated by my elementary education teacher peers, um, I did make it through. I'm still amazed by them. I still think that working with the tiny humans is really intense, but my fears and my insecurities have shifted into a deep appreciation for how there's so much to learn from different people. And, I realized some of my assumptions about literacy were wrong, and some of my initial beliefs were accurate, but I didn't know why. And, I thought about how hieroglyphs are like art to anyone who doesn't know how to read them. But it was just a part of everyday language to the ancient Egyptians. And now I know also that hieroglyphs are iconographic language. So the first step about literacy isn't just learning what symbols mean, but rather how we express meaning. Because even children, as they're beginning their literacy journeys, they express meaning through drawings and nonsense words. So previously, I might look at scribbles or invented spelling and be like, oh, wow, they really can't spell. But now that's just where they are developmentally, and it is okay. It's okay. That is a starting point that you can work with. I really didn't understand the stages of literacy. But now, looking back, I can understand that linguistic symbols occur much later. So when I tutored as part of my master's program, I looked at independent reading levels and instructional reading levels. And that really was a light bulb moment because I realized that, we're only in one level in secondary education English classes. And that is not always the appropriate text for students, which is why things like literature circles matter. But then you get into that whole debate about like funding and problems with equity and how do you assess students. And hopefully throughout this podcast, we'll find solutions to some of those problems. And, I know it's controversial, but I don't care if students read Shakespeare. I really don't. I think that it's time that we pull back from the canon and start including relevant and recent voices so that students can have those rich experiences, understand the components of drama in a language that they don't have to decode and break down and struggle with before they can get a joke. Because then the joke's not funny. If we have to explain every line, we're spending so much time decoding that text that we've lost meaning. We've lost enjoyment. We're not using aesthetic reading anymore at that point. So I think appropriate texts, relevant texts, those matter. Teaching the canon and teaching Shakespeare just because that's what we've always done is not the answer, and that's not going to help our declining reading levels. Neither is, scripted curriculum or any of those things. I want to see a world where instead of sophomores read World Lit, juniors read American Lit, seniors read British Lit, that we just find developmentally appropriate texts for students to experience, that we have lit circles and individual book studies and whole group studies, regardless of an author's origins or heritage, because the message we're telling students when we say, you should care about World Lit for 1 year. You should care about American literature for 1 year. This is your last year in high school, so now it's time to care about the prestigious British Lit. Like, what are we doing? Like, let's really pull back the curtain on how we develop curriculum and think about reading. Is that what matters? Should we be showing those perspectives and those authors just 1 year? No. We understand other cultures through reading about people from backgrounds that we never know. But when we think about cultural literacy, we think about representation in books, it's not enough just to have characters from different backgrounds. It's what are we showing about that character? What is the text about? What's the plot? Is this just a story that's going to paint them as a victim and then they are saved by some white savior that comes along? Or is this a story about a character living their everyday life, facing challenges, overcoming challenges, or maybe not overcoming the challenges, but just living life? Because that's what I want to see. I want to see students being able to pick up a book and read about a character who's navigating life the way that they're navigating life. And instead of these books where it's always someone's always a victim or they're dying. And we really need to think about that as educators about what books we're showing, why we're showing them. Are we only showing Japanese characters from a World War II perspective? Are we only showing civil rights movement texts in one time of the year? What are we doing here? Why are we doing it? So those things are really important. I want my students to live a reading life that is rich, and I want them to enjoy writing. The only way that they'll enjoy writing is if they have the space to write from their own perspectives. So these are a couple of the goals that I have, and I really feel like, tending this fire, lighting literacy is about honoring voices that are within a culture or background in stories where they're living their lives, and then honoring how students reflect on those stories. And as a constructivist, I think that you have to be a partner with your students so that we can look at what they're saying and say, okay, this is what you believe, but can you tell me why you believe it? And I know that was a lot of rambling about what I think about literacy instruction, but I want to talk to you like I'm your friend. And I want this to be an accessible podcast where, you can kind of question and think alongside me. I am going to be exploring a lot of different things from theories to articles, and I hope that you'll join me next time on Lighting Literacy. Thank you.